herself, a real trailblazer in the realm of boxing, um, if I'm not mistaken, and continuing on as a trainer, and is now, I still believe, Canada's only female ring announcer, if I'm not mistaken. Motivational speaker. Glad to have you aboard. How you doing, Yvette? It's all
Good,
good?
I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thanks. Very well indeed. We were chatting, just so the viewers know, chatting earlier about this date being rather auspicious, December 21st, the winter solstice, uh, migrating, morphing from one season to the next, the season of change, if you will, day of change. And we also have the planetary alignment, if I'm not mistaken. I think that occurred earlier on in the afternoon.
Yeah,
Uh,
122 our time, Eastern time.
right on. And how did it go for you?
Great. I did a little meditation. I honored the period of time where Jupiter and Saturn are the closest together than ever.
Than
Not than
ever?
ever, but in many 800 years.
Right. So it's well, I hope that just brings us good luck, quite frankly. Um, I actually did a bit of Googling, uh, not specifically on your background today, but on the background of the age of Aquarius, because I remember being a kid in school and that song came out in the 60s or 70s, The Age of Aquarius. So I thought we were already in the age of Aquarius. And then I saw on Google, there's just a ton of people with a ton of different opinion as to where we really are with respect to the age and the zodiac and all that. Anyway, I know it's not at
It
all
sounds like
boxing.
boxing. It sounds like boxing. Everybody has an opinion, right?
True enough. True enough. So how is COVID treating you? I mean, I would imagine badly, but then on the other hand, maybe not. Um, as a ringside, or sorry, as an in-ring announcer, probably badly, but for someone who's a trainer and does that training online, probably quite well.
Yeah, it's a combination. When COVID first hit, I was actually well on my way. I was like just peaking with my ring announcing success in a sense that I was just gaining traction. And part of that was I had exposure in the Toronto Star in the Sunday sports section. Global News did a little blurb on me. And then April 23rd, we were set to do the first all-female professional fight card in Ontario ever with a female ring announcer, and that was going to be done with Fight Social Club. And all of that obviously stopped. So in that sense, yeah, not so good. But in the sense of from my fitness background, yes, I have been active online, teaching my fitness and teaching different online programs and still talking about boxing.
It was fun when I came across your own website, and within that website, your own blog. I really enjoyed reading your piece on the balance, if you will, between waitressing and boxing. I thought that was really enlightening and enjoyed reading it and shared it on my Facebook page as well. But there is, I mean, a lot of similarities there, scoping the crowd, keeping your eye on the crowd, and fancy footwork, keeping your balance. It's all part of it, eh? It was a really enjoyable read. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah,
Um,
I actually, and it's true. I mean, for those who don't know, I spent 9 years waitressing and managing in restaurants. Part of that time while I was competing in boxing because the schedule worked perfectly because I can work the nights, train during the day, or flip it, vice versa. And looking back and reflecting on my waitressing skills, I recognized at the time when I was fighting actually how my waitressing skills did complement my boxing game.
did you get into boxing as for its fitness, or were you intent on competing?
Yeah, I did get into it for fitness. Actually, I was cross training for a bodybuilding show. I was preparing for a bodybuilding show when I was 19 years old. And I happened to also just drop out of university at the time. And I was pursuing the vocation that I really wanted, which was to be a personal trainer. I knew that. I knew that in my heart of hearts. And in order to do that, I got a job at a gym, at a local gym. And that gym happened to boast an incredibly sophisticated boxing program in the basement. So unbeknownst to me, I'm there studying for my PT certificate, training for bodybuilding, and in comes these guys back and forth, in and out, all these pro fighters, these coaches. And so it was just became a natural, I was exposed to it. Otherwise, I never would have been exposed to boxing.
So who invited you to step into the ring?
Actually, both coaches that were there, which was Andrew Heron and Billy Martin, who ended up being my main coach for all my fights, Billy Martin. But a gentleman by the name of Everton McEwen was also encouraging at the time. And he ended up years later being the person who also invited me back into the ring to be his ring announcer. And that's how I got into ring announcing like 15 years later. It was the same gentleman.
That's a good full circle story.
Full circle in the squared circle. That's what I say.
Yeah, there's many parallels for sure. So anyway, so you began your training, you got invited into the ring, you stepped into the ring, you accepted the challenge. How did those first fights go?
Good. I stayed undefeated as an amateur. And at the time, as you commented earlier in our private conversation, women's boxing was not, we were not invited until 2012, into the London Olympics. So at the time when I was fighting between the years 2000, 2004, Olympics was not an option. So I could have stayed amateur and went nationals, but I had my sights on the pros. At that time, there wasn't a lot of opportunity, but we could have carved something out. So I did go pro after only 6 fights. After a while in the amateurs, I just started like regionally, there just wasn't much there left for me. So I did get my professional license, started training as a pro, and then injuries set in and it just didn't work out for me. But it was a blessing in disguise. And I knew that at the time, like when I had to force myself to stop boxing, I don't call it quitting, because what I did was immediately turned around and started my business as an entrepreneur to teach boxing. And I did that for the next 15 years.
Do you find it's easy to attract new customers? And among those new customers, do you get a nice balance between men and women?
I do. I do. I would say 50-50.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of my business over the years with my classes, or I also taught and teach private training, one-on-one boxing training, was word of mouth. And, I realized over the years as well, people are very curious about boxing. People want to hit. They do. They're curious about it. They want to know what they're made of, so to speak, and they want to do it in a safe environment. I mean, really, one of the major reason that people don't box, so there's a couple of major reasons, I believe. They're afraid that they don't know how to do it. They don't have technique. Like anything, we need to be taught. And some people are actually afraid of their own power and what they have inside. And they're actually afraid to tap into that aggression that might exist in there. So it's interesting. I mean, I've been observing, I look at boxing very much from different angles. I see it for the philosophy that it is. I see it for the analogies that we could pull from boxing and relate them to life and being human. I see it, and I might get spiritual on you right here, but I do. Boxing is a spiritual thing for me as well. So, and if that's true for me, then it's possibly true for my students, and that's my approach to it. If they're looking for that angle in boxing, is just that kind of cathartic feeling of just releasing and letting go.
I can well imagine it's cathartic. I never thought of it as being spiritual. We've often discussed the art of boxing when conjoined with the sport of boxing. So there is a level not only of competition but also courage that's involved in stepping into the ring. Certainly the first, and then again and again, knowing that injuries are a part of the game, if you will.
Certainly. I mean, it's funny, I was just reading some quotes today because I was looking at, and I have been thinking a lot about the law of polarity, which is the yin and the yang, in other words, the yin and the yang. And if you believe in, the symbol that we're used to seeing, typically we'll see it in a martial arts club where you have the white dot in the black and the black dot in the white. And the concept of the law of polarity is that a little bit of the good exists in the bad and a little bit of the bad exists in the good. Same thing with light and dark, up and down. And so, with boxing, I do see that law of polarity existing, where when we can channel everything, when we can bring everything together and we can channel all of that, it's a very powerful force. If we can kind of find, boxing is all about balance. right? And you mentioned balance earlier. We require balance, agility. A lot of what makes a boxer great is his or her footwork as well, right? And so anyways, yeah, it's the law of polarity. I've been really looking at it a lot, and especially now that we're talking about, I know you gentlemen here on this show, which I really appreciate, have been shining the light on women's boxing. And when you talk about polarity, there's the male and the female, right? The energies, the male energy and the female energy. And we need both. We need both to collaborate and to come together and to grow and to be stronger, right? So that's kind of the way I see it.
I recently had an online discussion with a group of entrepreneurs, drawing the parallel between boxing and running your own business. I'm wondering if maybe in your motivational speeches you draw those comparisons as well.
Yeah, 100%. I just did one actually about a month ago. Exactly that. I did a Zoom PowerPoint presentation. I could do it for you one day if you like. And I was invited to do this talk. Actually, one of my clients thought I would be a great addition to this panel. And what it was teaching young people who are out of a job right now, who studied the hospitality industry. So again, I have that correlation because I worked in the hospitality industry, and he wanted me to do a presentation on what I learned from boxing and how that can help people understand their transferable skills. So similar to the article that you read, that's what I spoke about in terms of boxing. And I wish I remember the whole, but I had three main points. And it was, who's on your team in boxing? Although it might seem like you're inside the ring alone, you have a whole team of people behind you who put you in there. You had people that you sparred with that got you ready. I talked about being prepared in boxing. I mean, that's why we have training camp, right? 6, 8, 12 weeks, 6 months, whatever you call it, usually 6, 8, 12 weeks. There's a reason for training camp. It's to get focused. It's to get into the zone, get focused, cut out all distractions. And so a lot of these things that we practice in boxing can be related to life and improving and self-improvement.
Now, without a doubt, one of the parallels that's drawn is when we discuss on our other show, the issues that women are facing are similar to the issues that entrepreneurs face, and that is, quite frankly, generating profit. So you as an individual, as a boxer, in order to assemble that team, need to be either perceived as a profit generator or be, in fact, of the wherewithal to employ those people from the get-go. Everything from the trainers, the managers, all the way up the ladder, I would imagine, including ultimately the promoters. So we've talked about that on several different levels, like the issues that face not just women, but women and men today, if they're, especially here in Ontario, because we had the Ken Hayashi years where boxing and martial arts just weren't really allowed, actually.
Yeah,
So,
he wasn't a fan. He wasn't a fan of the sport.
and I really don't know how he got to his position. But anyway, um, so I would imagine it would be doubly difficult for anyone. It'd be like today in this COVID era, trying to launch a business where you're trying to attract the public. It'd be pretty hard. But back then, when you started out, there wouldn't have been much opportunity on a local level to display your wares, so to speak, and be recognized. So how did you make that transition from going from a province here in Ontario, where I'm not going to say it was frowned upon, but where there wasn't really the opportunity to put on events. So what happened to you? How did you survive that, if you will?
First of all, I love that you're bringing this up, the correlation between being a boxer and entrepreneur. And I do want to add to that my message to fighters, male or female, is that this is your career and it's time to own your career. And part of that, yes, is marketing yourself. Like, we can't sit and wait for everybody else to market us. And one of the issues that I've ran into, so when I did ring announcing initially in the amateur level, I did 9 shows with Everton McEwen. That went on for about 3 years. And then from there, I stepped into the pros. And during that time, I was doing a lot of my own marketing for the shows that we were doing. I was promoting it. And I've just found it really interesting that people in my community weren't sharing. Like it was, I say, hey, it's social media for a reason. It's free. Let's use it. Let's share the message. And if our collective goal in boxing is to raise the visibility of the sport, it's to put the bums in the seat, it's to get eyeballs on the table, on the TV, on the telly, then this needs to be a collective effort. And we don't have the big networks knocking on our doors. In fact, it's challenging to get any big TV networks to give us a glance anymore. Not since really the 90s did we really have much Canadian boxing. TSN covered us quite a bit in the 90s, covered boxing, I mean, when I say us. And we had a lot of, decorated fighters at that time. And, we lost that and we don't have that anymore. And if we want to get that back, we have to make a case for our sport, and we have to do that together, and we have to grow the fan base. And this is where I think this is where the work needs to be done. It's grassroots, it's building the fan base, and a big part of that is educating the fans on what boxing is and what it should look like. So back to your point about being entrepreneurs, we're all entrepreneurs in this. And we could all sit back and point fingers and say, oh, well, that promoter didn't put this on and that. It's, and to your point, back in 2003, when I became pro, I had sponsorship. I had a spot on TSN, Off the Record with Michael Landsberg. It was unheard of. And I'm not just saying that because I'm tooting my horn, but I pushed for it. I wrote up, I studied this, I asked questions, I talked to people who had done their own pitches for sponsorship. I took like weeks and weeks to write out my sponsorship package and proposal, and I presented it to the company that I was working for at the time, and they happened to be boxing fans. So, make a case for you as an athlete, for your career. And why should people sponsor you? You need to tell them why they should sponsor you.
And it worked?
It worked. And I got the sponsorship. $10,000 from towards my training and all of that. And unfortunately, it all didn't come to fruition. It was completely heartbreaking, but it did show me what is possible. People say, boxing is a hard sell. I understand. Again, people don't understand it. When they look at it, they get a glimpse of it, they see violence. That might be the first thing that comes across their mind. I understand. I actually thought the same thing. When I was younger, I was a massive sports fan, baseball in particular. I loved the strategy of baseball. I was obsessed with baseball. And I loved all sports, but boxing never came across my path. It really never did. And again, was it on TV really? And if it was, I would just be like, oh, what's that weird sport, But until I was introduced to the essence of boxing, to the intricacies of it, to the beauty of it, to the art of it, as you say, then I can appreciate what I was watching, what I was seeing. And that's what we have to do with our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. That is something that we do discuss, and it was one of the impetus behind launching this particular show. Because if you're going to reinvigorate, if you will, the audience, you have to start with the people who don't understand the sport and understand the technique that's involved, let alone the skill level, let alone the training and the commitment that's involved in the individual boxers and their teams that surround them. But if the fan is going to get involved, just similar to if you don't understand the rules of football, if you don't understand the rules of boxing, you're not going to be able to understand what's going on inside that ring, if you will. So that's one of our objectives actually on this particular show, is to help the fans, those new fans who are listening, listening to the stories that are being told to them, but also about this sport of boxing itself. What is there to appreciate? And there's so many different fighting styles that have evolved over the years, and the boxers who talk on this show, not me, can explain them incredibly well, and to the point where I'd sit there and go, wow, I never knew. I was of the mind that two people would enter that ring and start punching away. That was it. That's all I knew.
Mm-hmm.
And quite frankly, as I was saying before we went live, when I was a kid, that's what I was expecting, and I would get bored if they had a different style, feeling each other out, so to speak. I didn't like that. I wanted them to go head to head, toe to toe, right away, right from the get go, boom, boom, boom. You know, and actually Mike, who was going to join us on the show, was going to talk about you know, 4-inch gloves, 4-ounce gloves. You know, like as opposed to the pillow fight that went on between Mike Tyson and Roy Jones the other week. But the point is like there's so many things that fans don't understand about the sport. As I said, from the training, the commitment element, the team that's involved, uh, let alone the internal fortitude, the courage that's necessary to step into the ring. Then you get into the intricacies, as you said, that let alone the footwork, let alone the balance. There's an actual style that each boxer will, and let alone similar to other sports where you actually have videotape nowadays that will allow you to examine your opponent before going into the ring. All these things combined, the average fan or the person who's not a fan yet but is intrigued by boxing is certainly going to come across. I think all those elements kind of combine, and once they realize how intricate this sport is, they too will begin to enjoy it on a much wider, bigger level.
100%. There's a lot to understand. And when you understand boxing more, you start to understand yourself more, because there's a lot of correlations. Again, you know, one of my taglines is boxing is like life is like a boxing match. Life is like a boxing match, inside and outside of the ring, inside and outside of the spirit, the soul, the mind, the emotions. There's, you know, it's all encompassing. Boxing is all encompassing. It's not just physical, as you know. And those fans who do just want to see the two people go at it, the war, as we call it, um, or the knockout, and they're just there to see the knockout, it's such a disservice to how much more they can actually appreciate what they're watching. And yeah, the knockout is, again, it's the short-term gain. Like, I'm in this for the long game, like in the long haul. And I talk to people in my sport about, you know, what we show, what we present the fans with, we're teaching them what boxing is. We are showing them what it is based on what we put up there. And as you mentioned, the storytelling. I mean, why are people attracted to, why do they stay in boxing? Not only as a participant, but as a fan, it's the stories, it's the triumph, it is the
Disappearing act.
yeah. That was brilliant. It must be the solstice.
Must be.
It's the
There we go.
eclipse. So
Uh,
it's all of that. So, you know, I'm
sorry,
thinking
sorry. It's the unexpected that happens in life. There you go. You got to
it's
deal with it.
the
So
unexpected.
in that case, I had a backup plan. So the battery, the battery just went out on the camera, and there I was. There you were talking to the infinite void.
Yeah, that's all right. I was like, well, I could do this. I can just, you know, again, think on your feet, right? Be versatile, adapt, be a boxer,
The floor is yours. That's
make
funny.
adjustments right in a split second. That's what we do as boxers, right? Make adjustments.
There it was. That was your test. Sorry,
Yeah,
I interrupted. Where were you?
that's okay. So with the fans, and this is what I've been thinking about a lot lately as well, is, you know, somebody said to me, oh, Yvette, you know, because people don't want to watch women fighting, people don't want to watch women's boxing. I'm like, well, how do you know people don't want to watch? Like, where does that come from? Where does that idea come from? And how do you know that? Do people want to watch good boxing? Do they want to watch competition? Do they want to watch a sport and the strategy? And if that's the case, then the fans want to watch female fighting, because you have competitive fights, you have excitement, you have quality, and you have good matchups. Okay, just like the guys, there are bad matchups as well, but it's this blanket statement that I've heard over the years on social media or private messages, you know. And here's the other thing: when we talk about being entrepreneurs as a boxer, as an athlete, and this is our career, and we take ownership of that, hopefully, it's also up to us to recognize, if I'm an entrepreneur, I'm going to recognize that the person beside me is also an entrepreneur, and we're going to lift each other up. And and part of that is, in the fitness industry, this was very rampant for a while, where it's like, okay, don't share your secrets because, if they, okay, here's a great way to explain it. You want to open up a successful, busy restaurant, open one up beside another successful, busy restaurant. Okay, rule number one. A, you're going to get the overflow from that restaurant that has a lineup. And B, people are going to gravitate to that location, that geographical location, to go to this busy, successful restaurant. It's the same thing in boxing. If I'm going to be successful, I'm going to bring everybody else around me, male or female. And there's not enough of that in boxing at the grassroots level. And it's not that difficult. And what I'm asking is actually not that difficult. Share each other's stories, share each other's successes, and grow the vibration of the sport, grow the stories. And, and it's free. So this is one thing that we could just start doing collectively, I believe. And, yeah, I just feel really passionate about that. And people tell me, oh, Yvette, you're going to get jaded in this. You're going to get jaded in the sport. And, one of my mentors said to me once, oh, Yvette, hang in there. Don't get discouraged. And I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going. I'm in this for life. And when I first started ring announcing at the professional level, like I said, I had done 9 fights with the amateurs and for 3 years. For 3 years, I was taking storytelling courses. Again, I'm an entrepreneur. I was educating myself. I was empowering myself to be successful so that I could go in there and do a good job, so that I had the skill set to be able to do this. That was up to me to do. There was no guidebook for how to be a ring announcer.
That's right.
Who did I have to look up to? Michael Buffer? There's Amy Hayes in the States. There wasn't much video footage of her. So I took storytelling courses, I took improv classes, I took voice lessons. I'm nurturing, I'm building up my own case. And like I said, when I can do that and I can surround myself, I'm going to bring people with me along that ride. And that's what we could do for each other. And everybody wins. Win, win, win. So when people tell me, oh, Yvette, people don't want to watch women's boxing. Why not? Don't they want to watch boxing? So then what does it matter if it's a guy or a girl? What does it matter?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's been our contention as well. And as a matter of fact, you'll find that maybe it's beyond the 80-20 rule. Actually, it's worse than that. But you've got a finite number of boxers making the most amount of money, if you will, within the sport. And there's very few of those outside looking in who are able to or should be able to put in the money to promote the sport, and they don't. And I'm not really sure where it starts. Does it start at the broadcast level? Does it start at the ground level, as you're saying? But I would say that there's an awful lot of support at the ground level. There's an awful lot of personal trainers morphing their clients into boxing or any martial art, quite frankly. And out of that group or out of that class, you then have those who graduate into competitive arenas, who then move up the ladder, so to speak. But it's when you get into that upper echelon, this is only what, as a casual observer, I've been noticing these past few months since talking to all these people, you start to see there are certain people who are favored in the industry. But among those people who are not favored are the women. And I can't understand this one bit. To your point, they put on an excellent, I'm not sure, actually, I didn't actually count because I've only seen the recent YouTube's video. I'm having a young lady on tomorrow night, Amanda Gali, and she's had 4 bouts. She's undefeated, I believe. And one of her last fights was just before COVID. And I'm looking forward to talking to her because, what will be her next? She must be in the prime of her career. What will be her next steps? And is she facing some kind of blowback from an industry that tends to support men, if you will, at that upper echelon level? So I'm curious to talk to her and find out her feeling about that aspect of the business, because if you go back into history, a lot of the older guys who we have interviewed have told us about how bad it was back in their day. We good Canadians went through the proper channels, proper processes, if you will, and fought at the Pan Am Games, fought at the Olympics. Very few of them actually went pro. So you can well imagine how hard it is for any boxer to go pro and make money as a career in this. But even more so when we talk to some of the guys who did compete against, say, for example, the American fighters, we're finding out that there's some of a seedier background to all of this story as well. So I think if that gets cleaned up, that to be blunt, seedy element, there may be a residue of it in effect. But there are very few people who control the number of boxers, the Al Haymans of the world. They control a lot of the boxers, and I'm not really sure if they see there's room in their rosters for female boxers because, to be blunt, there's no money in it. So,
well, and again, I struggle with that because why would there not be any money with a woman's fight compared to a guy's fight that is, a guy who's not as known as well? I don't get that. That doesn't no, I'm not buying that there's no money in it. And I do want, first of all, we're in the midst of change and transformation. And if we don't see the progress that we want to be seeing right now, let's say in this decade, you're going to see it. And those who don't want to include women on the bill are going to be left behind. And that's what I got to say to that, because first of all, we're not going away. It's incredible the amount of women who are training to fight, to compete, and staying ready, regardless of them not getting the promoting and the attention and the opportunities to actually fight. It's incredible. The other thing I want to say to your point is also, I actually don't even think it's intentional a lot of the times. I think it's very deep rooted. I think, for example, the Mike Tyson fight with Triller, Mike Tyson, Roy Jones, and then there was we know what happened. There was the co-main event, which was a YouTuber and an ex-basketball player. The whole card was all male fighters.
Yep.
All the performers were all male. I counted 3 women in the whole arena throughout the whole broadcast. If there were more, I'd love to know. One of them was Christy Martin, sitting ringside because she's one of Mike Tyson's friends. And the other 2 women were, unofficial. They were, in behind the scenes. I don't think it came across their mind. Yeah, let's represent women in this event. I don't think it even crossed their mind. They're like, oh, here's my buddy Snoop Dogg, my buddy here, my buddy, and then it all just happened to be all their buddies. And it's going to make a crap ton of money, which it did. $80 million just on the pay-per-view, which it did. Why not throw in a women's fight just to give them that exposure? And how do you know people don't want to see the women's fight? A lot of the time, women's fight are the fight of the night. A lot of the times, people leave, people walk out talking about the women's fight because we go at it. And so to your point, I mean, I honestly, I'm just kind of, this is just hitting me now. I'm like, I actually don't think, and I don't want to be pointing fingers anymore. I just seriously think it doesn't cross their mind because it's habitual, right? It's just a habit. It's like, okay, this guy, it's in the language that we use. He, it's in the language that we use, and it's going to change. It is changing. We're in the midst of change, and we're going to make sure it changes. And if that means that we have to be the promoters ourselves, that's slowly happening as well.
I concur. I was not suggesting that I didn't want to see.
I know.
In fact, one of the observations we did make was that we were surprised there were no women. You haven't noticed one ringside. We didn't. But at the end of the day, we were really surprised there were no female fights that night. I mean, if you ask me, I mean, here in Canada, Hayley Wickenheiser has broken that mold in terms of hockey. We now speak about women's hockey as much as we do speak about men's hockey, certainly when it comes to the Olympic level. And I'm sure it's breaking other boundaries as well, this whole sex thing, gender thing. But at the end of the day, we now are standing on our little soapbox telling the world, women are as you said, going at it. They're
coming 2021. Honestly, it's amazing that, like I said, look out for these women fighters. It's amazing that they're ready, that they're staying ready. considering how little they get paid, and they have to have a full-time job on the side, and they don't have the support otherwise financially. And when I say we're coming, and I like that you mentioned other sports, you know, one of my mentors, she's from the football realm, from the football sport, the sport of football, and she talks about cross-pollinating. Us women need to cross-pollinate sports and support each other across sports. And, you know, soccer, US women's soccer team earlier this month, they just won a case towards being promoted, having the resources and the tools similar to the men when it comes to training and traveling. So they just won a case that they were fighting, and this was just recently. So there are things happening. CBC here in Canada, CBC Sports, the digital platform, has dedicated 50-50 coverage to male, female, as of this year in March. I think it was March or May. And so these things are happening. And like I said, if you're not tuned in, you're going to miss out that people do want to see representation does matter. And, you know, when I was ring announcing, one of the most common, some of the most common feedback I would get was from the men. You know, I would have women and girls come up to me and be like, oh man, like that is just so cool that you're in there, that you're doing that. And this is them not even knowing that how male dominated the role is of a ring announcer. Let's talk about male dominated. It shows up in as a tuxedo. You know, that's how you stand center ring in a tuxedo. That's what encompasses the ring announcer, tuxedo and a deep voice. So, but just as much, I had men coming up to me being like, wow, you know, you're a sight for sore eyes is what I heard, you know, and it's true, right? And it's like, and why not? Why can't we have that female energy in there amongst all this male energy? If you're not having, if you're only having, you know, 20% of the fights are female, or maybe 10%, throw in a female in there for to balance out that energy. Because we don't need it all testosterone based, right? We could balance it out. And again, it's a universal law. Let's be earthy about this, because it works and you can attract new fans.
No, without a
That's
doubt.
how it works.
Without a doubt. I mean, just you take a look at the NFL and the broadcast of those games. Among their crews now are a lot of women who have taken on very serious roles. And that must have been challenging, to say the least, up until a few years ago. And finally someone, I don't know who, but someone must have broken that ice, on through. And there's a lot of women in broadcast now, for example, also at the hockey level. So anyway, so I think women are, as they should, break through, break down those walls, and you know, and take their rightful spot, if you will. So here we are, back in the ring, and looking forward to seeing women fighting. Certainly, I hope as soon as COVID is over, we get back on track. Do you have any inside information when it comes to COVID and boxing as a ring announcer?
In Canada, yeah. You mean?
Yeah. Have you heard anything?
There's no word. No word.
Yeah.
You know, as it is, our fighters are, if they can, I mean, as of today, they announced another lockdown. So up until today, they've been fighting across the pond, right? They can go into, we had a fighter recently fight in Mexico, a few fighters fight in Mexico. One of them actually, two females, actually from Quebec. One of them, Kim Clavel, by the way, who gained her own sponsorship with GMC. I noticed that a while back, and I thought, good for you, girl. She got sponsorship. That's incredible. Anyways, so Mexico and in the UK, we've had a few fighters go over there over the last while. So our Canadian fighters, very unfortunately, don't have any opportunity here to, you know, blow off the ring rust. And they're just patiently waiting. So I have no word.
No word. Oh, darn. So is that a mandala behind you there?
Yes, it's sacred geometry.
Yes, very cool. I know you want to end off this show with a little poetry. Do you have something lined up for us?
Sure. Because, okay.
To give us that balance that we need?
That's right. See, it's an outlet. Boxing for me was an outlet, and then I needed an outlet from the boxing, right? So everything is about the outlets to create the full circle. All right. So I wrote this poem actually, as I said, the reason I retired from boxing was injury. So I wrote this years later.
I thought you didn't retire.
Yeah, I didn't retire. I stopped. I stopped. I pivoted, the word of 2020.
Correct.
I pivoted from competing to teaching.
Right.
Here it is. The more I heal, physically I feel capable again to bow down and kneel to my sport, a love that I miss so much. I still got the touch. I miss the rush, the intensity, that crush. Nostalgia is calling me back, taking me off the beaten path again. But it ain't the same. Not about glory or fame, really just a game. I want to win. Is this such a sin? I need to surrender. This dilemma eventually will render me helpless. I've never felt so strong about wanting more of something so wrong. How much further should I go and for how long before it's too late, before I'm not great anymore?
Wow. Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for your platform. I look forward to continuing to tune in. I will tune into Amanda's show tomorrow, and I'm happy to do this again whenever we have opportunity.
Oh, absolutely. We have big plans. So the viewers know as well, we're launching a new website, completely redesigned. It's to allow scalability, to allow more boxers, more personalities, more people interested in the sport, a platform to speak on what they want to speak about, so long as it's grounded in boxing. And as you say, there's a lot of ways we can balance the sport and the messages that emanate from the sport. It can't just be my angle or my panelist's angle. It's all of us combining and offering different paths, if you will. So when that, hopefully I'll see it tonight. But when that comes out, the world will know. It will enable us to give people that soapbox that they so rightfully deserve and speak what they need to speak about in the world of boxing, the art of boxing. So thanks very much for joining me, Yvette. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate what you have to say and what you've been through. It's been a fantastic, long and winding road as a career, that's for sure. But I love the fact, I'm not saying you started off as a waitress, because I'm sure you had other jobs prior to that pivot. But at the end of the day, it seems like a really interesting life story, and I'm glad that you shared it with us. Right, and so for the viewers out there, thanks for joining us. We went live. I was a bit late admitting my special guest. Sorry for that, but here we are.
That was my fault. I'll take responsibility.
I did see the flickering, connecting to audio. I'm thinking, have I done something wrong? Anyway, it was great. And then that bloop in the middle where my camera battery died. That figures. Anyway, it was great having you on the show. Really appreciate it. I'm glad you want to come back and share more stories. I'm sure the guys will have tons more questions related to boxing. And actually, you know what? I haven't even, stupid me. I should have checked the comment section as we went live. There are probably comments coming in as well, but we'll get to those another day.
We'll get to those.
Thanks very much. And for the viewers out there, please share, like, and send us your comments. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.